Alright, in this video I'll be installing this Western Digital black NVMe SSD into my Vision G Z490 motherboard. It's got an i5 processor, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want to do some GPU testing videos for video editing, so I wanted to bump up the hard drive that I'm currently using to something that's a little bit faster so I don't get bottlenecked on hard drive, because right now I have a really old SSD that's in the system. So like I said, this one is the Western Digital Black. It comes with a heatsink, although the motherboard also has sort of heat sinks built into it. So I didn't necessarily need to get one with a heatsink, but it was on sale, so it's good to go. Now before you go out and buy an M.2 SSD, you should definitely check what your motherboard supports. So you can see the top two bullet points there are the two M.2 connectors, and the upper one supports PCIe only, and the second one supports SATA and PCIe. So this drive that I got should work in both of them. So bullet point 9 on the motherboard, and you can see them there. The top one is the one that supports only the PCIe, and the other one supports the SATA. You could also check out in the manual if there's any benefits to putting them in one drive or another. And really, there is a benefit to putting it in the M.2 SB slot, because the other one will steal bandwidth from the SATA 3.1 connector if you're using that. I probably wouldn't notice that anyway, but I'm going to use the upper M.2 slot to put this NVMe SSD in. Unfortunately, it is a little bit behind the graphics card, so I'll just pop the 3060 out of there and set it aside for now. Also a good time to clean things up a little bit. And you can see there's two metal heat sinks over the M.2 slots. You can also see this motherboard has a third M.2 drive, but it also says reserved for future use. I don't know what that future use is going to be, but I'm sure it's not going to be my future use. So I'm going to put it in the upper M.2 slot that is covered by the heatsink. These screws are really tiny, and you need like an eyeglass repair kit or something, one of those tiny little screwdrivers to get these things out. Now, because my NVMe drive has a heatsink already attached, I'm not going to be able to reuse that heatsink that comes with it. I'm not sure how well it would sync up with another M.2 SSD drive, but in this case, I'm just putting it back in the box. You could actually put a drive of 3 different sizes in here. This is already set up to the correct size for this. And the drives just insert at about a 30-degree angle, slide it into place, and then press it down gently. In this case, there's a little standoff screw behind here, so it just connects to the standoff screw. Some motherboards might not have this standoff screw, but obviously that's probably the way most new motherboards go. So put that little tiny screw back in. It is a little difficult because it is so small, but you can see this heatsink's not going to line up. That heatsink that's on the SSD, it just sticks out too far, so it's not going to work out. But that's fine, because the graphics card's going to cover it up anyway, so it's not like it's going to look unsightly. And to be honest, even if the graphics card didn't cover it up, it looks fine. I do put the screws for the motherboard's heatsink back into the motherboard, because if I threw those in the box, for sure they would be gone forever. So once I got the NVMe drive in, I'll just take the graphics card, put that back in. Graphics card's got 2 little screws, and then the power cable. And that's pretty much it. Now this is the part I hate the most, is reinstalling Windows, because I just find it takes forever. I'm still using Windows 10, but that's fine. Okay, so before I took out the old SSD, I did run some tests on it. So I ran a user benchmark, about 101, high 90s, 98, 99s. The NVMe shouldn't impact how well the GPU or CPU perform, but you can see that this bench got a 57.7. That's an old Kingston SSD, and obviously not an M.2 drive. I ran it again, 105, and then again high 90s for desktop and productivity, and then one more time, 107, 99, and 100 for the workstation. So that's the old drive. Could still see it's the Kingston SSD that I was using there with a 68.8. Numbers bounce around a little bit. And then with the old SSD, I did a boot time test. I did it about, 6 times. And every time I was in the 26 second to sort of 27 second range. So overall, the really old SSD drive isn't slow, but here's the scores on the NVMe. So you can see that everything's kind of better on the user benchmark. So obviously this bench 371%. So it's way faster than the old SATA SSD, 111, 105 desktop, 104 workstation. So everything else is pretty much the same. And obviously it provides a lot better performance overall. It should be better for me to do some benchmarking stuff in the future. I won't get bottlenecked on my hard drive for sure. And then I do some startup tests on it, just like I did with the SATA SSD, and it clocks in about 15 seconds to boot. I think my best time was sort of closer to 12 seconds. You might have a motherboard that requires you to go into the BIOS and change your M.2 drive configuration. Mine was just automatically set to PCIe, but if you're using an M.2 that supports SATA and PCIe, you might have to go in and then change your motherboard configuration for the M.2 drive from the SATA to the PCIe in order to get full performance out of your PCIe drive. Just something to keep in mind. I couldn't do it with my motherboard, so I couldn't, really film that. So there you go, 13 seconds or so. It boots up in about half the time that it used to. So I'm not so impatient that 13-second boot time is worth the money that the NVMe SSD costs. However, like I said, I do want to get into some video editing tests and stuff, since I do have a bunch of graphics cards that I would like to try out and test and see which one is actually the best, and see if I could do dual graphics cards and stuff like that to get better video editing performance. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.